Welcome to The Blast. I'm John Pritchett, co-host, along with my friend and my business partner and the founder and chief innovation officer of BOA Nutrition, Hank Derschlag.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, this is kind of cool. We've known each other for 20 years. We've had a chance to help each other, consult with each other, work together, how we met originally 20 years ago. We've both done a lot of different things, and here we are again. It's like we put the band back together.
Yeah.
And it's great. We're the first question I have written on the board, because you know how I love to use a grease board. What the hell is BOA? I thought that'd be a good place to start. You invented this. You're the mad scientist. So give us your description of what is BOA.
Well, I'll tell you what BOA, the roots of BOA go back probably 15 years. I'm a healthcare guy, came from the diabetes world, learned a lot about how nutrients and various things are delivered to the human body, and try to take some of those things and apply them to sports. One of the biggest problems in sports is always replacing fluids, electrolytes, nutrients that are lost when you sweat, when you're active. Of course, the number one is salt, and you'll see a salt rim on your hat, or you'll see the salt on your accumulate on your shirt. And one of the first applications was there was some new technology around thin film, which a lot of people are familiar with, the Listerine breath strip or Chloraseptic breath strips and different mint strips. We were kind of the pioneers in that product category with a group out of Southern California. And I actually co-authored some of the original patents around that technology. I worked a lot with Duke University, Duke Sports Medicine, to bring that along. It was a great product. We started off delivering sodium or electrolytes. The California group actually were the first group to ever deliver an active. They delivered benzocaine, which was a cough suppressant to soothe sore throat and cough. So we developed and we started a company called Enlighten, and we delivered electrolytes, and it was a great product, a little cumbersome to use. So sold that company, and it's still operating today under Enlighten. A group out of Arizona is running that company. And then I came back and I said, well, there's got to be a little better way to do this. We're looking at the products that we developed, and I kind of rank things on a scale of 1 to 10. And you look at convenience factor, you look at taste, you look at the effectiveness of the product. So with all those products that we developed, the thin film applications, the sublingual drops, we were kind of at a 5 or a 6. We made them taste good. They did work. They weren't as convenient. So I said, there's got to be a little better way to do this. So I'd been playing around with trying to suspend the molecules in oxygen. And I thought if I could do that, then I could administer the oxygen and the molecules together. And that might be a pretty neat application, which is easier said than done. We couldn't get the oxygen.
Let me ask you a question there. So one of the reasons you want to do that is because you understand all the benefits of oxygen, because you've been researching the cognitive and other athletic benefits that could come from oxygen, right? So that was the original concept?
That was the original concept. I found some great studies out of Asia that showed so many benefits of oxygen and delivering oxygen not only to the body and to the bloodstream, but also to the brain, getting proper oxygen flows to the brain for reaction time and decision making, things like that. So I thought it would be a great application to combine that with the electrolytes, with the sodium that you need. But it's again, as I said, it was easier said than done to get the actives to remain stable in the oxygen. So basically what BOA, the eureka moment was when we said, maybe let's flip the switch. Let's take the actives that we want to deliver, and then let's put those in its own container, and then let's pressurize the delivery device, in this case a can, with an oxygen gas blend. And that's what we've done. And now we can take any active. So in this case, we're delivering sodium. We're delivering a nutrient that helps the active adhere to your mucosal tissue in your mouth. We're delivering a nutrient that helps the active penetrate into your mucosal tissue better. We put flavoring agents. So we're doing that, and then it's all pressurized with, in this case, oxygen or ambient air as a gas. And the pressure from that atomizes the molecules and creates, just in my mind, a better mousetrap from the drops or the thin film strips.
So that's why you call it a blast, right? Because you're using the compression, the oxygen, as the delivery mechanism, right? And then you're forcing your slurry, your nutrients, through this valve into the aerosolized blast, the spray, right? And that comes out at a certain volume with a certain amount of dosage, right? A heavier load than you could have in the other products. And then because of the proprietary mixture in combination with the pressure, you're kind of coating or spray painting the mouth, right? I think is what I heard you say before.
Yeah, it really creates kind of like a matrix because there's a lot of variables that we can now control. We can control the active that is in the slurry. We can control how much sodium, how much potassium is in the slurry. Then we can control the size of the nozzle, which is this. That determines the size of the atomized molecules that we deliver to the mouth. Then we can control the pressure in the can, which is the rate and the force at which those molecules are pushed through the nozzle. So we have a lot of neat variables that we can control to create what we feel is the optimal amount of active that we should be delivering to an athlete in this case.
So BOA being a blast of optimized actives.
Optimized
BOA.
actives.
Yeah.
And the matrix is that I just explained is how we optimize it.
It's the reason I'm involved. You and I know each other a long time. You called me when I was doing something else and said, look, I want you to be on this board of the company, and here's what I think is disruptive, innovative idea I have that I know will work, but we need to go and prove that, and then we need to build a real company and figure out how to exploit this because we think we have something really big. And I agreed totally. What you just described, I would describe without all the detail probably to someone, but it's much more interesting to hear you describe how you got there, the level of detail you have as a healthcare and development and researcher and who understands this. I'm a marketing and business guy, but what I see is something that's 10 times better, as our chairman Jim Kitchen would say, something that's dramatically better than any other way. It's the taste is much better than what currently is being used. The convenience of how you can just take a blast in this lightweight aerosol can and do it while you're exercising, while you're riding a bike, while you're running, whatever it is you're doing, carry it with you. The separation of the water and the electrolytes or the actives so that you don't necessarily have to use a bunch of fluid to deliver the electrolytes. All of that is really, really disruptive. The fact that it's concentrated, that it works 10 times faster because of the mechanism. I mean, all of that adds up to what a marketer's dream is how do I have something that's not just a little bit different, a little bit of tweak, a little bit of spin, but dramatically disruptive, game-changing, you're changing behavior. And that's what I would say BOA is. It's a radical idea aimed at some really big markets with problems that exist that consumers already know about. Like, for example, when we talk to triathletes, we heard over and over again, and especially those who really understand their body, which most triathletes do, and marathoners, endurance athletes, I sweat so much, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 milligrams of sodium an hour. There's just no way to replace that. You've been talking to the Duke Sports Medicine people for years, and they've had this problem for a long time. Certain athletes have this massive sweat rate when they're at full exertion over a period of time. There is no way to rapidly replace that other than an IV until now.
You know what I like the most about this product is I can describe it in different ways to different groups. I can sit down with doctors and scientists, and I can go into all the science behind the product and the atomization and the pressurization of the can and the delivery of the molecules, and they get it, and they're excited about it. And then I can go to a coach or an athlete, and I can say, you just spray it in your mouth, and they get it, and they like it. So it's just it's a different way to appeal. It's a very It actually, I don't want to simplify it because it is a very sophisticated device. I mean, there are so many variables, but there's such a simplicity about it that you just spray it in your mouth. And no one has ever done that. When people come to me and I say, well, I have a new product, I'd like to share it with you. And they say, I've seen a lot of things. And I always say, well, you haven't seen anything like this. And then when I share it with them, they say, you're right, I haven't seen anything like this. And I think that's the disruptive part And we know that sports just continues to grow and grow and grow, and it gets, younger age groups. Now you have, when I was young and you were young, John, we didn't have travel baseball and travel soccer. You played, Little League baseball, you played soccer. Now, travel soccer starts at 8 years old, and travel volleyball. So, club volleyball. So now it's just it broadens the market, and people are always looking for that edge. And I think BOA is a great product to give them that edge.
Yeah. So, and I think this is a good point to sort of define what the difference between BOA, the brand, the idea of a blast of an optimized active is, versus this first product, which we're calling Endure. And we've been talking about the sodium gap. So we're solving that big problem with endurance athletes and with really all athletes who are doing full exertion over a sustained period of time. Everybody has different sweat rates, but almost anybody who is a serious athlete, in terms of serious meaning they're spending multiple days or they're spending, multiple hours in an exercise activity, whether they're cycling or running or swimming or playing basketball at the Y or tennis, whatever the case is, they understand the sodium gap. They understand they're sweating a lot. Most people understand they need to be hydrated, but most people are not really dehydrated, right? Most people are not really hydrated. They've been drinking. Everybody knows to drink. Most people, not all, but most people have been drinking. The problem is if you run out of sodium, you might have the fluids in your body, but you can't pull those fluids through to your muscles and cells if sodium isn't there. And we burn sodium much more rapidly than other electrolytes, correct?
That's correct. And you said a key point. Most athletes aren't dehydrated, but what they are, even at the start of a game or a match, is they've already burned nutrients. Because in order to go out there and perform, you have to go through a warm-up phase, whether it's hockey or basketball. You go out, you do a shoot-around. Football guys do drills, football players, and you sweat. Some of these guys start, and they've already lost a lot of the nutrients. Those nutrients are what aid them to maintain hydration. So, there are a ton of studies out there that I could cite that, if you lose 1% of your body weight, you start to experience not only physical decline, but cognitive decline. So a lot of these guys, they're kind of starting behind the 8 ball. They're already starting, and drinking or eating anything, you just can't catch up. So what BOA does, in this case, BOA Endure, is, as I call it, a gap product. It's going to aid in helping you stay caught up. You still have to drink. You still have to, eat some carbs, eat some different things. Eat at a halftime or eat during breaks. Whether it's a bar or whether it's a gummy. We still want them to do all that. We just think that BOA is something that can accelerate all that. BOA Endure, and it can keep you as close to caught up. And if you're caught up, you're performing at a higher level.
So we've talked about fast matters, and that is because how quickly this works. And then also because, as you said, I like when you talk about how you can only preload up to 100% of your capacity, right? You can't preload 300%.
That's
you're
exactly
at 100%.
Right.
So when you start losing, you're losing from 100%, right?
Exactly.
So whatever you started at, you're going to burn it faster than you can replace it. And that's what makes this a really unique product, because it's an elegant answer, to use Jeff Potomsky, who's the head of Duke Sports Medicine. He describes it. It's simple, it tastes good, it's convenient, it's easy to use, it's fast acting. It's all those things that make it a really elegant solution. It isn't complex, but the problem has been around for a long, long time. And, you'll watch your favorite team in the fourth quarter in an autumn Southern football game, and you'll see 3 or 4 players down in the third or fourth quarter. They're cramping. You'll see the trainer come in, and they're giving them water or whatever the isotonic is. And we chuckle about how, that's going to have an impact after the game, right? Because they're not without fluids. They've lost sodium in all likelihood. And the only thing you can do to rapidly replace that sodium before BOA is you could give them an IV, but you got to go back to the locker room. And most athletic trainers and sports medicine docs will say that's not a good practice to have.
Well, you're right. And when you see that athlete go down with cramps or something, that's a drastic case, and it's visible because everybody sees it. But what people don't realize is when you see in the fourth quarter, a quarterback drop back, throw a long pass, and the wide receiver missed it by 3 inches because he wasn't as fast as he was in the first quarter. So it's a performance factor. When you watch a tennis match and you see they're in the 5th set, and they're just not as quick getting to the ball, so they miss points. So that's where I think BOA can come in, with the drastic cramping and all those things that you see. But I think it's a performance product that will help athletes maintain their performance throughout the entire game or match.
Yeah. So now what we were just talking about, again, as I said, is Endure. It's a product underneath, call it the BOA brand, which is the Aurablast technology, right? So we're starting with Endure. It's a sodium replacement product. There's not a whole lot of ingredients in this, again, which makes it sort of elegantly simple. But the plan is that BOA Endure is one product solving one problem for a large market, but not as large as all of the other problems and potential markets we could solve with BOA. For example, if you formulated a solution to a problem like needing fuel, or needing to get to sleep rapidly, or needing energy rapidly, or needing to calm yourself and reduce stress and anxiety rapidly, or whatever problem. If you start thinking about BOA in that regard, that's why our shareholders, why you and I and our team at BOA are so excited about what the potential is here. We're staying focused on this particular problem and this particular sort of niche area with Endure. But once we're successful here with penetration and adoption, which I'm confident we're going to be, then we can look at all of the potential. And it's important to think about what the value could be long-term from a shareholder standpoint, and also to be thinking about what you want people to be part of, something really, really big. I will make sure we don't take our eyes off of the day-to-day that we need to execute to be successful first, because if you're not successful here, you have no opportunity to scale. But it is exciting to talk about the big vision that you have about what else you could do. So you want to talk for a minute about some of those things you might create and some of the applications, kind of think big for a minute, as if you were pitching to an institutional investor that wanted to know what was next.
Okay. As with Endure, it's a very targeted market, but I think there is an application to move Endure to other markets such as football, soccer. If you have an athlete that is particularly a heavy sweater, and then the sodium gap is so big that they may need a product like Endure. But as John said, there are some other products that we'll be introducing. The second product that we're going to be launching is a product called BOA Fuel. And what Fuel is a product that will take some of the energy enhancing nutrients that are lost, or that you may just not have a lot of in your system at the time, and give you those just to help you if you finish a match, finish a game, finish a set, and that'll have various B vitamins and some other key nutrients. So that'll be another product that, again, is a targeted market, because we still think that's an endurance product, because endurance athletes need to finish. They've expended a lot of nutrients. But as you look into other sports, and or other sports and lifestyle products, like I said, I came from the diabetes world. We did a lot of neat things in healthcare, but one of the programs was a diabetes and pregnancy program where we help manage type 1 and type 2 women through their pregnancies, which is sometimes very difficult. We used insulin pumps and very strict shot regimens. But it was in healthcare, it's called an acute care model. When we were talking about acute care, doctors and insurance companies and everybody kind of pays a lot of attention to something in acute care, because you have a window of opportunity that you have to treat that patient in order to get a good outcome. So I looked and said, how can we take that and apply it over into sports and other lifestyle areas where you have a certain amount of time and you want to get an outcome. And now time management is a key with a lot of people. If you come and you get a headache, you want to get rid of that headache quickly. If you want to go to sleep, you want to go to sleep quickly. If you start to have, let's say you're hungry, you need to curb that hunger pains quickly. So there are a lot of things that fit into that acute care model. So the first product that we will move into more mainstream sports is we'll take Fuel and we'll take Endure, and we'll kind of combine them. So the athlete or the everyday person who may not even be an athlete, but they may, like to walk on a treadmill, or they may like to, do other forms of physical activity, whether it's a young person or a senior, and that we'll give them some sodium. They'll have the B vitamins in there. We'll have some maybe caffeine in one product. Probably have a product without caffeine, just to give that everyday person, because they don't need 150 milligrams of sodium in one blast.
So what you're talking about now is that product would be sodium, maybe vitamins, B3, B6, B12, maybe caffeine.
Probably magnesium, potassium,
magnesium. So kind of a blend of, you're probably not having the experiences of some of these, marathoners or triathletes or, college athletes, but you're still into fitness or exercise or walking or playing recreational sports, like I said before, tennis, YMCA, whatever it is. Yep. Maybe you play, as an amateur in something. You're still in need of replacing supplements. You're still in need of something that's fast acting, but you may not need the same dosage or the same number in a serving, like you said, 150 milligrams of sodium, or a certain amount of carbohydrates and calories. But this mix would be sort of a way to have one product that you could use.
Exactly.
Right?
And you look at sports in general. I mean, adults really don't participate in sports. I mean, in stick and ball sports. Adults, other than professional athletes or college athletes, they don't play baseball or football, or maybe a little pickup basketball and stuff. But the adult sports are these endurance sports. They run, they do CrossFit, they do Spartan races. Those are more individualized sports. And why we like that market is because they make their own purchasing decisions. They're very educated. They understand what nutrient regimen works for them. We're talking about a product in Perform that will move into the mainstream, where youth soccer, youth volleyball, lacrosse, high school football, high school basketball, and those decisions are usually made, or those athletes usually follow the guidelines of their trainer or their parents. So but it's a much larger market than the adult athletic market.
So what you're describing is what I'd call the traditional pyramid approach. So you're starting in the top with these elite level athletes, the ones who will spend the maximum amount of money to get the solution that's going to help them, because every second counts and every milligram counts, et cetera. And as you move down that pyramid, that's a small market, and as you move down the pyramid, the market gets broader. But then you have less of the price elasticity. You start to get into the recreational sports athlete. Eventually, you get to the lifestyle, and again, the market gets bigger, but the willingness to pay gets less. So you have to be more competitive in the pricing. But that's a well-worn path, but a very successful path for companies that can start by being successful at the top of that pyramid, and then using that as their momentum to come down the pyramid, if you will, to eventually you get to a big, broad market where you've got scale, you've got retail, you've got, tens of millions of people, and not hundreds of thousands of people or single-digit millions of people using your product.
Well, here's the other thing that's neat with BOA and its family of products is not only will we expand into other markets in sports, other age groups, but we'll also expand from what I call on the field or training products to off the field products. So, I mean, when I deal with Duke Sports Medicine, they say the hardest thing we have to get our athletes to do, it's easy to make them train and go to practice. The hardest thing is to get them to eat right and sleep. So, it would be great for, as we move forward, we have a product that right now on the drawing board is called BOA Lights Out. That'll be a sleep aid. So it'll help an athlete get to sleep quicker. It'll help calm their mind, because these guys have a lot going on, especially, college athletes with their schoolwork, whatever else is going on in their life, their practice regimen season. So that's a great product that will address the sleep issue. You get a lot of large, bigger athletes that may be on a weight management program because they have to maintain a certain weight. So we have a nice product that we call BOA Fit that'll have a metabolism booster and an appetite suppressant.
So what you're describing now, just to level set, are future products that you're in development R&D with. That's
R&D.
Sort of the pipeline of what you're developing for the future.
But the nice thing is it takes us from the other products I call performance products. So BOA Endure, BOA Perform, BOA Fuel are all products you use while you train or while you compete. These products are what you use the rest of the time.
Right.
You need to sleep, you need to eat. We have a product called BOA Recover that is a post-workout product that gets you back some of the key nutrients that you've lost when you worked out or when you participated. And there's some great studies that show those nutrients, if you can replace those nutrients within 20 to 30 minutes, you have less of a chance of developing, an upper respiratory infection or any muscle aches. It's best that if you try to recover quickly after a workout.
So this has been really good to dive in for a few minutes on what the hell is BOA, right? That's the big question I had written up on the grease board. And so wanted to get our audience in this first podcast to understand what it is that, motivated you to create this company, what motivated me to want to come and run the company, what motivated our investors to want to put money into a seed round, literally without a product that had been developed, but based on the potential of this idea. Hopefully that listeners here get a sense that, like all of us have, is that this is a really big idea. It's a really elegant solution. It has a potential to be very disruptive and to be an excellent, a 10-bagger kind of return for shareholders if we do the things that we need to do every day, which is like what I like to talk about, right? The execution, the building of the team, the execution, the measurement, the day-to-day stuff that you've got to do to take your idea and your skills and your vision around the corner and turn it into actionable, steps every day as we build this team, as we figure out how to position ourselves, as we figure out how to gain customers, as we figure out how to learn from those customers, as we figure out all of the details, which we'll talk about in subsequent of these podcasts, about how you go about building a company, how you go about executing a strategy. And, people can get caught up in great ideas, which great ideas are rare, but lots of good ideas. You and I have had this conversation a million times. But executing is always hard. The bigger idea, the better you're spending your time doing the hard stuff like execution on a really big idea versus just a nominal, or a little bit better, fractionally better kind of concept. This isn't some little fractional thing. This is a really big opportunity. And so the fun part is trying to take this and break it down into little pieces and execute this and get us on our way to, the first customers, which will, get us to repeat customers, will get us to telling other people about it, and we'll be able to scale that business. There's a lot of moving pieces that we won't talk about in this episode, but I appreciate you painting the picture for everyone about what the hell is BOA. So I think we've done that. I think everybody understands now what it is and what the potential is for it, and basically understands the concept of what's the oral blast. I think what would be good here is to talk for a minute about why we wanted to even do a podcast and what we want to accomplish with it and what listeners can expect from this. We want to kind of tell the story and take people along this journey of how does it work? How does somebody take an idea and build a business? And what are the issues that we wrestle with every day? And so there'll be episodes dedicated to us talking about manufacturing challenges, all the supply chain challenges we've been through, all of the development efforts, all of the testing, all this sort of product R&D development that nobody really knows about. They just see the product, and then they might see the marketing. We'll certainly talk about the marketing, the positioning, the creative, our e-commerce strategy and what our digital and social media plan is and how we're executing that and how we're measuring it and all that kind of stuff. But, the advisory board, the raising of capital, all the things that we've done and every company has to do in some form. I think that will be interesting, and we wanted to share that and talk about it so that people could go along on the ride and see what's happening every day and see, hopefully this goes on for a long, long, long time. There'll be plenty of things to talk about. But I think starting with giving people an idea of BOA was the right way to do it. And then, we've got a list already of the things we want to talk about. For example, future guests. We're going to start having some guests once we get far enough along into this content journey. Just some of the people that we want to bring on and talk about. We want to bring on the head of the ad agency we're working with in Chicago. It's a consumer products good agency. Agency really known for doing things way outside the box and thinking differently and being disruptive, which obviously we chose for a reason. We've got a lot of really interesting people on our advisory board, including a global brand manager from a major golf brand, who's done a lot of really interesting CPG marketing and is really into the data and has been helpful for us. And that'll be a fun conversation. You've known the head of Duke Sports Medicine for a long time, Dr. Jeff Potomsky. It'll be fun to talk to him, and Dr. Burkhoff and Dr. Walters, who you and I have both known I've known him for 35 years.
Long time.
Yeah. And so that'll be interesting to hear their perspective as sports medicine folks and athletic trainers who deal with athletes and who see all sorts of products and are very familiar with all these issues that we're trying to help solve. We've got an Olympian who trains Olympic athletes, endurance athletes, who just joined our advisory board, and we want to talk to him about his experiences, as well as a former NHL player, a former MLS, FIFA soccer coach. There's a lot of interesting people that we've been able to attract to this business that we want to talk to. Our chairman, who's a large investor in the company, who is after exiting his successful company, he's spent most of his time making investments and looking at early stage seed level companies and deciding what really is a big, potential 10-bagger and figuring out how to dismiss it. And most of the ideas he dismisses rightly, like most venture capital, seed capital, early stage investors do. The very first meeting he said, I'm in. And so it'll be really interesting to get his perspective, to talk about all the things that he sees and what he goes through when he tries to filter those things out. We've got a head of a digital media agency who's spent his career looking at digital media and understanding that. And he buys media now for a lot of the NBA, teams and Major League Baseball teams and colleges and professional sports. And so, and we're borrowing all of this expertise and intelligence and bringing those people together because, you and I believe wherever possible, try to find experts and try to learn from them and borrow from them. And I'm a generalist. There are things that I know and things I know I don't know. And so I would go try to find the smartest people I can to help me figure out the things I don't know. And I know you're that way too.
Well, I think that's one of the advantages of being a little older. And literally, this is probably my fifth startup. And I've been successful at all of them to different degrees. But I always go back and I say, I worked in corporate America healthcare. And I think that I helped build two companies that were both sold and were merged, and both times I was the first guy fired. So I say, if that's going to happen, I can do this for myself. So it's interesting. I say this is my fifth startup, but I go back to my first startup, and the president and CEO was Mr. John Pritchett. So now we're kind of back full circle. So I think over those last 20 years, not only have I learned a lot in the science field and research, which is what my passion is about, but I've also learned a lot in business, how to approach things, how to make sure you get the right investors, how do you get the right people that mix together and blend. Because I've had some good ideas and some great ideas, and sometimes a couple of times the good ideas have done better than the great ones because we had the right people. So now I think we're borrowing from all those 20 years of experience. And some of the people that we're working with now, we've been involved with for a while, and then there's some new, fresh faces. So I think it's a great mix, and I'm excited about the team. And of course, like I said, when I was looking for someone to run this, turned to John, and was fortunate enough that he was at a stage in his life where he said, yeah, I'll come back to North Carolina and run this for you. So so far the stars are lining up, and we're just going to keep pushing forward.
No, I appreciate you saying that, because I think you're right. Once you get to be as old as we are and you're still able to have your everything functioning properly, you're the benefit of...
We're not that old, for crying out loud.
I meant cognitively, but you have the benefit of learning from your mistakes. It's what the lessons you learn. The biggest lessons are always from your mistakes, and I've had a few of them. I mean, you look at most successful entrepreneurs. They're the product of a couple of failures, But and the important thing to remember is the failure is never permanent, right? Unless you let it be. And I think that's a good lesson for people to understand too. You get to be this age, and you're going to have some war stories. You're going to go through, like what we went through 20 years ago. Yeah. I've had a lot of successes, and I've appreciated those, and I've learned things from them. But I've learned the most from the failures, the disappointments, learning how not to repeat. Things, making a note and saying, okay, if I get to this point, I know which road to take. I understand what didn't work, and I'm going to make sure I don't make that mistake again. Is when you make the mistake over and over again, that's when you get into you question your cognitive abilities then, because that's literally the definition of insanity.
Well, that. Let me interject on that point, because I was listening to a podcast and it was talking about the culture of Silicon Valley. And it said Silicon Valley is one of the rare places in the world where failures are sometimes worn like a badge of honor, because they admire people that try things and are innovative. And sometimes, it may just be the wrong timing. Your idea may be solid. You may lack funding, or you may, it's hard to line all the ducks up. But it was saying that the culture exists in Silicon Valley, and that's why it's such a hotbed for technology for the last 70 years or 60 years. Is because that culture exists where people aren't afraid to say, hey, what if we did this? What if we tried this? And I think that's what we're doing with BOA. People would say, oh, you'd be crazy to spray something in someone's mouth. And when we show it to people, we go to, we've been to some triathlete events, and we say, yeah, spray it in your mouth. And they look at us kind of first like we're crazy. Then once they do it, they say, oh, that's pretty cool. So I think that's the culture we want to have at BOA, is we're not afraid to say what if, and let's try this. And maybe there's a little better way to make people sleep, or a better way to have a nice weight management program, or do different things, or if you're stressed out, try hit a BOA chill. We want to do that stuff.
Totally agree with that. People a lot of times will say of entrepreneurs, oh, you're arrogant to do that. And I always say, no, you're misunderstanding the point. No, it's actually humility that lets you do it. It's your understanding that it's okay to go try something big and fail at it. It's not permanent. You're not going to die. And you might just make something that makes a huge difference. You might solve a problem for people. And when you solve a problem for people, they're grateful and they give you money. And then you hire other people. And then all these other pieces that are connected to that benefit from it. I can look across at our supply chain right now, even as a small company, just started to get customers, literally just started spending our first ad dollars today. Think of all the people that have benefited as a result of us creating this opportunity. We're just scratching the surface, but there's a lot of pieces connected to that. And if somebody doesn't try, and all of this is new, none of this would have existed. None of these opportunities would have existed for the people that are in our supply chain because nobody was doing it before. And that's the point of entrepreneurs and capitalism, is the humility to say, yeah, I don't know. I'm okay going out and trying things and failing quickly and learning quickly and adapting so that I can serve my fellow man with some new idea and something that could be beneficial in their life, right? That's all we're really trying to do. And it's what John Allison, who's the retired, great leader of BB&T, who also ran Cato, I heard him speak the other night, and he was talking about how BB&T had this goal when he was running BB&T, and it was a culture. It was throughout their organization, which was to say, we want to have a relationship with customers that can be a win-win. Every relationship. We don't want to have a we win, they lose. We don't want to have a they win, we lose. We want to find a way to create these small little win-wins with each customer. And if we can stack a bunch of win-wins up with each customer, we're going to make money in that process. We're going to make a lot of money. We're going to be very successful. And there's nothing wrong with that, because it takes wealth creation, and innovation and all that comes with that to really make the market work, right? If you go back and look at all of the wonderful innovations and creations all over the country that gave birth to jobs, whole industries, supply chains, all of that. I mean, all of the progress we've seen has really been a result of people being humble and willing to say, I'm going to go try to serve my fellow man with something better, and I'm going to take the risk, and it's okay if it doesn't work.
Well, and then, in this case, I look at the investors that have backed us to this point and got behind us, and they're smart guys, very successful guys. They could put their money in a lot of different projects or deals or companies, or they could put it in some cases in their own company. But they've backed us. So on my startups, we've always been able to raise money. I mean, John knows we've raised a lot of money. I haven't raised the money per se, but my ideas have raised a lot of money over the years. And I look at the quality of the investors, and I think this investors group is as good as any, or better than any group I've had. They fit this space. They see the big vision. They've been very helpful. So all the pieces are kind of lining up. Now it comes down to execution, and that's why I turned to John, and now he's building the team. We're made a few key hires. We'll be making more. And now we're just getting this thing started. It's just, like you say, the tip of the iceberg, but so far so good.
Yeah, what I've learned from a bunch of mentors in my 30 years of career has been what you said about big ideas. You were saying how sometimes the good ideas ended up better than the big ideas. It's almost a universal truth. There may be some law. If not, we need to come up with it. That
could do that.
If you take, give me a really big idea and a poor team that can't execute, and your great idea is going to be shit,
Well,
and
I can show you that.
Give me a good idea, with a great management team that can execute, and that's going to be very successful. Now, I'd rather have the great idea and the great management team to execute, but you could take an okay idea and execute really well. Now, you're limited into how big it can be, but it can be very successful. Yeah. And so, not that you want to sacrifice either, but you need both.
No, and I'm not being pompous. It sounds pompous to say this, but I've had a couple great ideas, and I've had a lot of good ideas. But BOA is really a great idea, and I think it's a great idea because it's the sophisticated simplicity of it, because it is a very sophisticated product. But it's also so simple that people say, why didn't I think of that? And a little thing like just making it taste good. We went to some key investors early on, and they say, we've looked at a lot of nutritional products, and the problem was we could never get anybody to like the taste of them. So when they look at our ingredients, even in this case, it's sodium, and they're expecting to spray something in their mouth or blast it in the mouth, as we say, and it tastes pleasant, and it doesn't taste harsh with the sodium, they're very surprised. But over the last 20 years, I've worked with some of the leading flavor scientists in the country, and I always look at people that come out of the chewing gum or the ice cream industry, because those are a lot of the great flavor scientists come out of those industries. But we have a good group, a good team that's helped us make this thing taste good. If it doesn't taste good, no one's going to use it. I don't care what's in it. So it's those sort of things. I think this is really, I know we're just getting started, and I don't want to sound pompous, but I think it is a great idea. But a great idea could just as easily fail for the reasons John said if I don't have the right team. So that's just a big part of it. And as we talk about, starting a business and startups, I think that's the key thing for anybody, whether you're young or old and you want to start a company. You better look at the first couple people you bring in, because that can make or break you.
Yeah. And you always, as Chuck Jarvie, who was a really important mentor to me, who's a longtime Procter & Gamble consumer product goods guy, I've got a notebook full of his memos back in the day when he used to send typed memos, and we had fax machines, or sometimes even mail them. I'd just open them up and have the memo from 5 days ago, but I kept all of them because there's just so much wisdom and all the things he learned over managing people and launching brands and marketing, and a lot of it is psychology, and he would always have these, there's just these points of wisdom around, the simplest things. When you said the simplicity of this, I thought to myself, note to all of the entrepreneurs and people listening to this who are thinking about developing products, it may be simple, but it's also so sophisticated that there are 18 patents.
That's true, yeah.
Because there's a lot of moving pieces in doing this. It is a simple idea, but not an easy one to create, because literally every step of the way we did something that hadn't been done before, right, or we combined things that had been used for some other purpose into something that created BOA and the Aura Blast. And there are a lot of parts to that, a lot of ideas, a lot of different uses that combined into create something totally new from thin air, a new category, if you will.
No, I agree. It's in a couple $100,000 in consulting, IP consulting that went into this. So again, to look back at starting a business. Now I'm fortunate because I knew John's character because we've known each other for 20 years. But a lot of people go out and they make the mistake and they say, well, I'm going to start a business, and they, no offense to people, but they kind of bring in some buddies, and they say, I'm going to bring in some buddies. And I remember years and years ago when I first started this, it was an older guy and he had been pretty successful, but he said, Hank, remember one thing, it's not show friends, it's show business. And
yeah.
So, right, it's nice. And once you start something, it's always exciting and kind of sexy, and everyone says, I want to be in your startup, I want to be part of it. But you got to really look at them and say, well, what can you do for me? And then what can you do for yourself? I don't want to take you and bring you in and put you in a position that you're going to fail. So you got to watch building that team. And that's why, and I've not been the best at it over the years. But I have learned enough to say, hey, when I knew I had this, what I considered to be a tiger by the tail, I had to get somebody in. And that's, and again, when John came in, and actually one of our agencies, and a guy that I respect a lot, is the one who said, it was after John had joined as my first board of director member, and he said, what about John? Maybe John would be interested in this. And I didn't know if John would or not. I knew John checked all the boxes and had all the skills. He's not a healthcare guy or a sports medicine guy, but I kind of covered that, so I knew we would be a good complement to each other, and I think we are. And now we're enhancing that team with people who have skill sets that we don't have. We don't have any digital media experience. We don't have really creative experience, although with both marketing guys. But we went out and we raised the money and we hired the right people. And one of the compliments that I like getting is when I share BOA or share some of our digital media, they say, Hank, I like what you guys are doing, because we have a lot of people that come in with good ideas, but they don't go through the efforts to put the right money behind it, and they don't. They may take shortcuts, and you guys aren't taking any shortcuts. So I think, yeah, it's been expensive, but I think, nothing worthwhile that you can create. It's going to be a combination of hard work and money. You got to spend the money.
Yeah, and you got to know where to spend it to get the return, and sort of the sequencing of what's the most important place to put the money in the beginning to get to the point of being able to penetrate and being able to scale. Back to Jarvie, when a couple things you said reminded me of some of his things that he reminded us of. One of them was he used to always say, fire fast and hire slow. So when you know someone is not right for the culture, move on, right? Let them go because they're not right for the culture. Let them go because, they don't fit into your culture, and you've got shareholders and a future that you're protecting, right, for the long term. And so and hire slowly means you do everything you can do is you can outsource or you can do yourself until the point where you can't do it as well as it needs to be done. Then that's when you go. For example, our first two hires are people we've never worked with before, right, but they were the people who fit the culture, who had the expertise that we don't have. And that's what hiring is about. Building a team is about finding the people that are really good at what they do, much better than you are at it, right? And if you're really good at something, you don't really need to hire somebody just like you. That'd be kind of a waste of money, right? So, I mean, that's the CEO's job, is try to fill in all the people that can be complementary, that understand the culture, that bring this skills and experience and expertise that fit what you need done. But only when you're at the point where you're just about, to die because you're in need of it, right? You don't want to hire and have somebody sitting around. You want to hire somebody when the job, they can jump in and they're going to be busy right away in the first day. And I'll bet you Mallory could attest to that.
Well, that's the problem with a lot of people doing startups, is that they don't have, they may have a great idea, but they don't know what to do with it. And it's not that you have to be an expert at any of these things. You just have to be able to move your idea or your project along enough to get one or two people interested and on the same side of the table as you and believing in your idea. Then you have their skill set that helps you. So you can't just go out and flip a switch and say, I'm going to go raise $10 million for this project. If you do, you'll end up with 5% of the deal or 2% of the deal, and the investors will end up with 99% of your deal.
So we'll talk about this in future episodes, because there's, I think, a whole episode on structuring stock and equity and raising capital and all those issues. I think that's a really fun topic. I think there's a whole fun topic around building the team and management team and roles and responsibilities. There's a whole one on just like supply chain, manufacturing, process management. I learned some big lessons when I was doing the turnaround of AstroTurf, which I'd love to tell. You've heard them. But you talk about going into an industry and not knowing much. And again, that takes, it does take humility. It takes a certain amount of confidence that you can figure things out and how things should be done from a management perspective. But it also takes a humility, a willingness to walk into an industry knowing people are going to say, he's not from this industry, he doesn't know anything. And so I always think there's a benefit in being, hey, I'm just all shucks, I'm just the dumb Southern guy here, right? I'll listen to you guys, you tell me what you do and how this industry works. But because I come from outside the industry, I've learned to use that as an advantage. Like, I have a unique perspective. I can see, the trees, without being blocked by the forest, because I'm looking at it with a different set of eyes. But I'm also humble enough to know I don't know anything. I need to learn as much as I can. And that combination has served me well, to be able to say, I don't know this industry, but I'm going to find out and learn quickly and get the right team assembled. But I'm also, because I don't know this industry, capable of seeing the mistakes and asking questions about, why are you doing it that way? Why are you doing this way? There's a thing that you know about in AstroTurf that in a future episode I'll talk about, where we did some things that just seemed to me to be no-brainers that had never been done in the industry before. And the reason is they're all in there doing that's the way everybody did it. Why would I change? It's worked for me. And then, you can really disrupt an industry when you come from the outside sometimes. And so I've learned how to use that as an advantage. But, you also have to have the humility along with it.
Well, that's like when we get on the conference calls and John starts talking about the science, and I'd say, wait, when did Pritchett get so smart? How do you learn all this in 1 year? So,
right.
But but it takes work. It's as John said, it's humility, but it's also confidence, because you're coming into something that is new to you, and you don't know, and you have to be confident that I can learn this. I don't know it yet, but with some help, I can figure this out. And I think that's what we've done. Social media. I mean, I'm 58 years old. I'm not a social media guy. I have an Instagram account, I have a Twitter account, and Facebook, but I don't know anything about how they work and what motivates them. And it's, you say it's a young man's game, but I can learn it. I can learn enough to help where I can at least, speak intelligently on it, or comment or say, hey, this is why it's working. So I'm very fascinated. Now we just started spending some digital media money, and I'm fascinated to look at the dashboard that these guys have created, where I can see, here's where they're targeting these ads, and here's the response we're getting, and here's what we're going to do if we don't get the response we want. We're going to shift money here and do different things. So I'm really fascinated to learn that. It's a whole new, it didn't even exist 20 years ago when I did my first startup. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out. And I think it helps kind of make me feel young and be young.
I'll give you another Jarvism, and then we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
Chuck used to always say, in a company, you need to have two generalists, and everybody else needs to be a specialist, right? So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. you hire the specialist or you outsource the specialist who really know what you don't know. As the CEO or as the chairman or whatever, that top level management, you can be a generalist, and the interns can be generalists, right? Everybody else really needs to be a specialist. Yeah.
That makes
because we can't afford to pay for people to learn. We're a startup. We're moving fast. We got to learn fast, fail fast, keep going, get customers, keep failing quickly, learning, adapting. And so you want to get specialists.
Well, so far we've made a couple of hires. One of them is our colleague Mallory, who is here with us, and
also known as the producer of the Blast.
She makes this thing tick, and she does beautiful work. And
hopefully what she'll do is she'll edit all together in post production, and it's gonna seem seamless, like we were just having a conversation. There were no problems, no flaws. The lights didn't go off twice. None of that.
Yeah, she can make me look like a Hollywood celeb or something.
So she's not a miracle worker.
I didn't say she was.
So look, our goal here is to have this conversation, Hank and I talking to each other, letting you listen in on it, sharing what we've learned in the past, what we're learning from BOA. I hope it will help you. It will help whatever stage you're in with your current company or your future ideas, no matter what age you are or how much experience you have. That's part of the goal of the Blast, is we want to have a good time. We want to be open up, and let you see what we're doing, learn from what we're doing, the successes and the failures. And then I think the next time we're going to talk a little bit about our stories a little bit. So go back and on the next episode, I'll ask you some questions. You tell your story of kind of how you got here. I'll do the same. I'll answer your questions. And so folks can understand, when we talk about our experiences, maybe have some way for that to have context for them within the BOA story. Okay. And thanks for doing this, and I'll talk to you next week.
It's a blast.